Greetings and welcome to Creative Mornings, ad hoc show that looks at all the shapes and sizes. I'm getting some weird audio feedback. That's a little strange. OBS is obviously not playing along with me this morning. Anyway, we're looking at all shapes and sizes of creativity, even when technical issues get in the way. I'm getting a strange audio delay here. I wonder if you're getting it on your end. I will continue and hopefully it won't be too out of sync. So we'll let a few minutes pass while give time for people to join the stream. I look at different things: animation, video, graphic design, Photoshop, music, synths, guitars, all kinds of whatever takes my interest that day, whatever I'm feeling creative to explore. Of course, this new reality we're in, where many of us are at home with nothing to do, try and encourage anyone and everyone to explore what creativity means to them, find ways to keep the brain engaged, keep the creative mind engaged, and just take a little time each day to play and explore. Even if you've never done so before, it's never too late to pick up a pencil and start sketching, pick up an instrument and start noodling. So that's what this show is really about. So today we're going to pick up a little bit from where we looked at sky replacement on earlier this week, and came across a few little, or one particular sort of hiccup where blurring out the sky that we had, it required us to use a particular blur. So if I open up that document, we can. That is what we're going to be creating today. We're going to be creating a whole brand new sky. But the double click on the surface blur. Surface blur is a nice smart blur that will blur the interior of a shape. As you can see here in this preview, it's recognizing the edges where there are defined areas of contrast. Whereas my original attempt to use the motion blur to create some streaking, obviously it was the wrong tool for that job, because it blurred everything uniformly, which is what it's designed to do. Gaussian blur too will behave in the same way, but for our purposes, where we were trying to mask it without doing a lot of painting and cloning and recreation, just a quick blur to smooth out those areas, the surface blur proved to be the tool for that job. So I got to looking at, okay, well, how can we maybe just not blur out what was there to create a smooth, flat sky? What can we do to add some further interest? How can we recreate a completely new sky? So I'm going to close this and I'm going to open the completed job, and we're going to start again from scratch. We're going to create this fantastical scene. Again, it's hyper realistic, not really something you might use in any place where you would be needing something to be realistic. If you were looking for something that was hyper realistic, something that was fantastical, this sort of technique will lend itself. Obviously, you can modify this technique and dial it back a little bit to where it could be made to be realistic. But for the purposes of demonstration, taking it to the extreme, dialing it up to 11, just so you can kind of see the effect. So, okay, let's delete all of these. Actually, we will save those. I'm going to delete the sky layer. we'll keep the sun layer because that's what we'd created that last time. And I'm going to delete these layers. So previously we had these adjustment layers, and let me go over to full screen Photoshop. Let's see. Let's go over to here, full screen. There, maybe that gives us a little more room for you to see on the screen. So we have this using the previous document we already created with the sort of purple sky. We have our mask already made, so I'm not going to re-go over that again. I will just retread briefly to summarize. We used the magic wand tool to create the area. We used the refine edges to soften and choke the mask a little bit, and then we did some manual painting to paint back in the some of the detail down here that was lost where the sun was blowing out that horizon. So we did a little bit of automation and a little bit of manual touch up to get this nice crisp mask that isolates the sky. So the first thing I want to do then is I'm going to create a new layer, Command Option Shift N, and I'm going to add the filter Render Fibers, and this creates an algorithmic random texture, and you can randomize it here, creating some different looks, and we can mess with the I want it to be fairly medium contrast. Strength, I think I want it to be a little softer than that. There we go, maybe something down the low end. So we'll just go with that for now. So we've got this, looks like tree bark or something, that fibers, and I'm going to call this, I'm going to name this layer Sky, and bring that down beneath the adjustment layer. So what I want to do, I'm going to hold down the Option key and drag the layer mask onto the sky, and I'm going to unclick the little link. If you see in between each thumbnail and the layer, you can see there's like a link. Now what that does, that will preserve the position and scale of the mask, but now I can select the actual contents of the layer, and I can then transform that. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit, give me some room. I'm going to Command T to bring up the transform dialog and function, and I'm going to hold down the Command key, and that allows us to free transform each corner. So I'm going to bring and we're going to bring out this, which is why you need to zoom out quite a way, and lost my little preview here. There we go, got the preview back again. So we've got this highly exaggerated perspective look of whatever the cloud formation might be. I'm not entirely sure what that cloud formation is called, but we've all seen a sky like this driving across the desert in our convertible, wind in our hair, and the sun is going down, and you've got this amazing striations of clouds across the sky. We've all been there, right? Surely we have. Anyway, so after transforming that to get the extreme perspective, I'm going to accept that, and because we've got this area down here that isn't quite, I'm going to transform again and then just scale the whole thing up, holding down shift and then just scaling it up, repositioning just so that just a matter of pushing and pulling, trial and error. Obviously this is all about exploring and playing. There's no hard and fast recipe for getting it right the first time. Obviously the more you do it, the more used to the tools you'll become, but every project you're really looking at new ways, finding and exploring, and that's obviously what this whole show is about. So let's get back to our image, and we can start playing with some color correction. So I'm going to this just increases the contrast. Let's take a look at what we've got here. I've just got a slight. Now this is the color correction I had done on the previous sky replacement project we worked on. So I'm just going to modify these a little to taste. To get the sky blending in, I'm going to go to overlay because that's always a good place to start, and you can see it's not bad, but it's a little black and white, it's a little high contrast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the hue saturation. I'm going to colorize that sky. Bring up the saturation a bit more and just make it a bit more in the vein of the color that the whole photograph, at least to start with. You can see back here we've still got some of the noise from the old sky. So what I'm going to do, I am going to create another new layer, and I'm going to just create a quick gradient. And let's sample dark sky to light sky, and then just create a gradient, holding down shift to keep it to a 90-degree perpendicular to the horizon. So we've got this gradient here, and I'm going to option drag once again this sky mask layer. So now I have this completely new sky, just flat and featureless. But now when I add our clouds over the top, we've got this really bold, striking look. Now it's a little bit strong, so I'm going to dial that back. I'm going to hit 5 on the keypad to bring down the opacity to 50%. And now I'm going to toggle through these blending modes, and obviously we can take a look at some of these, and clicking on them, it's a little cumbersome. So the shortcut is holding down shift, as long as you've got the move tool selected, because say for example we have the brush tool selected, we're going to start toggling through the blending modes of that tool which we which we don't really want. So make sure you have the move tool selected, and then shift plus or minus will toggle through these blending modes, and we can quickly get an idea of which one of these is going to work best. Now for something like this, maybe luminosity is good. It takes the black and white values and applies it to the color of the layer below. It's a bit monotone. Obviously we want to get some nice rich tones in there. Multiply will make it darker, color burn will make it darker and more saturated. Screen will blow it out, color dodge will blow it out and get it more saturated. Same with linear dodge. We get to overlay, and that really, it saturates, lightens and darkens. It's kind of like the best of all worlds, and it's kind of the blending mode I usually go to first to try and see what it looks, because it's more times than not it's the one that's gonna work and look the best. So, and we can go up one more to soft light, which is just like a dialed back version of overlay. So I do like what overlay is doing. I'll play around with the opacity a little bit and see which one is. So I think about 66% I've got looks something quite bold and striking. And we have the color correction layer right here, which is already adding a bit more contrast to that. So let's see, we've got the sky color, which I don't really need right now. We've got our sky color determined by these. I'm going to call this grad. That's the sky gradient. Foreground color correction. Let's bring this more in line with, let's see what we're doing with the red. The sky is looking kind of warm and orange, and the foreground's looking a little green, so I'm just going to try and match that. There we go. So again, it's a matter of pushing and pulling and playing and seeing where ends up feeling right or feels nice. We're not always looking for right. We're looking for what feels nice. Because this obviously doesn't look right. It doesn't look realistic, but it definitely. Okay, dial out some of that yellow. Okay, so just dialing in some curves with the individual color channels. Then with the overall RGB color channel in the curves box, I can just dial in some overall contrast for the foreground, and that just affects the foreground. We have the sky mask, which has been inverted, which allows us to play with the color correction for the foreground. So we can see it's a little bit flat and a little bit greeny brown, and we've been able to bring out some of the saturation to make it look more like a desert sunset scene. Sky is still a little bit much, so I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring up the levels and play with the midtones a little bit on that, and also I think I'm going to just blur them out a little bit, and I'm going to do that again. And I think what I will do as well, just because it's looking very streaky, it's kind of cool, but it's very streaky. I'd like it to be a little less streaky and a little smoother. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to scale this up again. Now what I'm going to do is drag the center point down to kind of round about where the lines are converging on. And I'm going to hold down Option Shift, and then it's going to scale from that point. And I'm just going to scale it up, holding down Option Shift and then dragging one of the corners, and it's going to scale the entire sky up, but it's going to scale it up with this as the center point. So it maintains that sort of focus. Now I'm just going to try and get some of the lines in somewhere that looks. I'm trying to get the interaction between this dark area here and this mountain to be, yeah, maybe this looks a little better. Over here we've got more difference between the directions. We've got some almost verticals to some very diagonals. Maybe I'll see if I can bring that over a little more. Yeah, that's not bad. This mountain outcrop of rocks right here is still got some contrast with the background. I think I'm going to blur just with a very light Gaussian blur. That's too much. I'm just going to maybe bring it down, and we can see how much it adds, just to try and kill some of that detail. That's in the clouds layer. Okay, so if you bring our sun layers back on, now we've got the sun blending in, and again the sun layers are all set to overlay, which blends in really nicely, brings out the saturation and the warmth of the color. It looks more natural. I think I'm going to do one more curves layer, which I'm going to delete the layer mask because it's distracting, and I'm just going to call this global color. Just as one last little S curve, just to tie it all together, as I like to do, and that just helps pull the whole image together. I think I always say that, and I kind of do that almost as habit now. Yeah, completely fantastical sunset. What this needs, I think, seems we've got a little time. I've been at this about 20 minutes, so I'm going to add a vignette. So I've watched too much Top Gear, and because they love the vignette, I've grown to love a heavy vignette. Vignettes add a lot of drama. So what I'm going to do, let's create a new layer. I'm going to label this vignette. You'll notice I never fully label my layers. I always have some kind of shortcut. Trying to be efficient, but so let's dial up our marquee tool with the oval, and I'm going to hit return to get the feather attribute, and I'm going to say 200. I'm going to have a 200 pixel feather, and just drag from the top left corner to the bottom right corner, and see how that looks. I'm going to Command Shift I to invert the selection, and then hit D for the default colors, which brings the foreground color to black, and then Option Delete. Now that's a little strong, so there's a couple of ways I can. Let me deselect that, Command T to scale it up a little. That'll just get us some. Actually, I could probably maybe just bring it out this way, maybe. Actually, I think what I'll do, oops, just hit the corners. So we've just got the corners vignetted. Again, I'm going to multiply that. Maybe we will take a look at what linear burn does. Look at what overlay does. Yeah, overlay's quite nice, but it's a little... Yeah, let's just go back to multiply. And I'm going to create another layer. And then I'm going to create a square marquee tool, again with a 200 pixel feather, which I will then drag from the top corner, and that will get more of a rounded rectangular look. Command Shift I to invert, and I'm going to Option Delete some black into there again, and now we've got a little more vignette on the top and sides. Again, it's a little heavy. Hit V. I'm going to transform that up a little bit just so it's not quite so in your face. We can see you've still got a little bit there, and I will multiply that and then dial that back again to about 50. I've got a subtle vignette around there combined with the vignette down there, which I think I will scale up a bit more. Again, push and pull, exploring, no hard and fast recipe. It's a constant chiseling away of the marble to reveal the artwork below, right? So we're constantly playing. That's the beauty of digital art, right? Is that nothing's ever set. You can close a project, come back, you know, the next day, next week, next month, and feel like, oh, you know what, that wasn't quite right, let's change it. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's all a process of elimination, process of exploration. So I'm going to select those two layers, hit Command E, and select that back to multiply and rename it Vignette again. So I've got a combination. I've merged the two vignette layers. It's heavy in the corners, slightly darker around the sides, and that just adds a little extra drama to our overall shot. And there we go. So that is a completely fantastical, completely replaced sky, completely digitally manufactured. Now obviously you can mix and match this technique with maybe find a sky that you like in a photograph, and you can use portions of that. You can use, you know, the entire shot, which has then been transformed. You could use the liquify tool to manipulate and massage a sourced photograph, or a photograph you've taken yourself of a sky, to replace it. Or you could, if you're feeling extra bold, is completely paint a new sky, similar to the one we created with the Fibers plugin. You could hand paint some clouds, and that could work if you're looking for a more sort of cartoony effect, or if you're really good at, you know, painting, if you've got the patience to really paint all those subtle variations in the clouds. But either way, sky replacement is fun. It's a way to take a straight photograph and add some fantasy, add some drama to it, and of course, really the key takeaway is that masking is the most powerful aspect of Photoshop. It allows you to do anything and everything, and we'll get more into masking. We'll look into some creative masking techniques, ways to, you know, shortcut to get to some masks, some more laborious masking techniques. So that's all in the future. Hope you found something useful out of this. Stick with me every morning or afternoon or evening and try and make this available to as many time zones as possible. I know obviously it's a global community on the internet, and while it may be 4 in the morning somewhere in the world, or is obviously 4 in the morning somewhere in the world, hopefully it can always be a creative morning wherever and whenever you are. Okay, well, thanks for sticking with me, and explore your creativity. Hope you have some time. I'm sure you have some time on your hands with the world we live in now, and you feel inclined to go and play around with something creative. Hope this motivates you, hope this inspires you, and come back for more in the days and weeks to come. All right, thanks. Have a good one.